Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Hopelessly Gifted podcast. I'm your host, Mark Talaga. I'm very excited about today's episode. We have with us a very special guest, and we're going to talk about some really interesting things regarding, oh boy, it's a lot of stuff. Mastery, identity, video games, being who you are. It's a lot. So buckle up. We're going to be a great time today. Our guest today is Anthony Rosner. I met Anthony in a very interesting way in the sense that I was researching some articles for games, screen time, and gifted kids, all this stuff. And his name and a documentary he created came up. And so he's the documentary film director of the films IRL and IRL 2, which you can find on YouTube. Currently, he resides in London as a freelance videographer and photographer. And I just want to welcome Anthony Rosner.
Hi, Mark. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on board. So yeah, I reached out to you basically randomly after finding your Instagram and saying, I really enjoyed your story. I really enjoyed your documentary. And you were gracious enough to say, sure, I'll talk about it a little more because I think it's really relevant to a lot of the listeners out there, not just because, they have kids who, maybe spend more time on video games than most, but it's more really about a story where you made a choice to create something different for yourself, create a different pathway, even when you felt like you were kind of being pulled back to the World of Warcraft and the gaming over and over again. Could you do me a favor and just tell people a little bit about your documentaries that you created?
Sure. So IRL and IRL2, they're kind of the documentaries about the struggle of gaming addiction in World of Warcraft and sort of how that affected my real life and the balance between gaming and the things I wanted to achieve. And even with the IRL1 film, it was originally made as part of a university film production course. Sorry, there's some background noise here.
We could pause for it.
Yes, sorry. I can't work out. I think it's from your mic, actually. Sorry. Should I just redo that bit again?
Yeah, we'll have you redo it. What's happening? I might be up too loud. Okay, let's see if that's any better.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll redo the intro to IRL. Okay, so IRL is a documentary about gaming addiction, and it's kind of looking at my balance between how I juggled gaming and neglected real life. So the film originally came about because it was part of a university project where I was studying film production, and but to sort of the film kind of goes even further back, where I was at university studying film production, but I was neglecting my studies, and I started. So I've been playing World of Warcraft before I joined university, and I'd still been playing it as I joined, and I kind of was skipping courses, not doing my essays, and it kind of come to a point where the course leader pulled me aside, and she said, "Look, you're at the risk of failing your university course. You can either redo the first year, or you can do all the essays you missed for the entire year. You got like a month to do them, and you keep going." So I kind of was lit a light bulb in my head where I thought to myself, "Okay, right, I better stop World of Warcraft, and I better focus, do my essays." So I locked down, did all my essays, did all my courses, and I managed to pass the first year and went into the second and third year. So the IRL films came back in the third year, and again, I had a project, and the course leader told me to try and make a film about something personal, and I wrote overcoming World of Warcraft addiction as one of my achievements, and she kind of took interest to that, and that's kind of how the film sort of originally came about. So.
Oh, that's really cool. And again, just for the layperson, IRL stands for in real life, because lingo heavy. So it really is a fascinating thing you did, where I don't think a lot of people realize the skill of feeling like you were just in this routine, trying to balance everything, and then being reality checked with the idea that you're going to have to make a change pretty immediately and quickly, and then being able to do that without totally sacrificing one of your side, your either your gaming or your studies to do it. It's a very challenging thing to do, and I think that's a big part of what we want to talk about today. And I think that actually relates to this burning question I had you come up with for today's episode.
Yep. So the burning question would be, how do you justify to yourself where you dedicate your time and effort in between like the different interests you have? Like, how do you pick where to focus?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because you're framing it as, how do you choose? How do you make a choice? And on some level, my reaction is it as simple as choosing, or is there more difficulty to it? And really, why do you think it is so difficult?
I suppose it's an interesting way of phrasing it, because in a sense, when I picked up World of Warcraft, it was very much an innocent kind of, okay, here's a game, I'm enjoying the game, and it kind of arrived at a difficult period in my life because I was at high school at the time. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. I had problems with the other students in my year group. Didn't really feel like I had a friendship group. I felt alone a lot. So I used to go into school and I used to skip school, literally just go home straight away, trying to fool my parents into thinking I'd gone to school and then just going home. But, and then basically World of Warcraft was there. I did play other games before. I've been playing games since I was a kid, like forever. But World of Warcraft it was the first game. Like I had interactions with people before through like Xbox Live, and I met up with my clan in London once when everyone sort of converged there. But World of Warcraft was kind of the first sort of game where it felt like you could really form friendships and strong social bonds, and and because I was lacking that in my real life and I was getting it from my virtual life, it grabbed me in that sense. So it's almost like I kind of got almost seduced by what the game offered in that way, and I didn't realize what happened or how I was kind of put my efforts there versus what was going on in my real life. I kind of went with it. I didn't really think too much about it. I was only like 17, 18,
Right.
So I wasn't really thinking more about priorities in the real world. So in a sense, the game kind of chose me rather than me choosing the game.
Yeah, well, it offered you something that you weren't getting in real life. That to me is an extremely relatable experience, and a lot of things that I think parents and anybody that plays games need to understand. When you look at somebody who's hyper focused on gaming, you do have to ask the question, well, what are they getting out of it? And it's not, oh, they're getting dopamine and that's just all it is. And it's the little stars that come up and excite. It's bigger than that, because I agree with you. To the listeners, I played World of Warcraft for many years. And I 100% believe that the relationships I created in that game were as real as any I have in real life. It was a very connective experience. And to your point, if you're living in a way where you don't find that, you don't see it, or the amount of work that it would take to create that, why wouldn't you take something that's a little more structured and scaffolded and pulls in other people of like mind and likability?
Absolutely. And within the game itself, there's the different activities you can do. Like you got the raiding, you've got the dungeons, you've got the questing and leveling together. And those aspects are they're very social aspects. The raid, you'd have like 25 plus people sometimes all together, all coordinated to share the same goal in defeating a boss or and in a sense that again is a vessel to kind of keep the social aspect going. If you stop raiding, if you stop being a guild, you kind of lose that aspect of the game. and the kind of the main draw, in a sense. So, it starts becoming the point where it takes a lot of time to maintain that strong social connection with people. And you kind of, like I said, I didn't get it from my real life, but I got it from my virtual life. So I started focusing my effort to make sure that I had the best chance of keeping those social connections alive, by organizing raids, making a guild, making sure there was like a healthy number of people in the guilds to keep the raids going. Because obviously, if you can't raid, then again, that's kind of severs that social aspect. So,
Right. You don't have the goal together. And we were saying this off mic, but I, I don't think people realize how much work and organization and dedication and skill goes into creating and running a guild. Like it is 100+ person operation with organized times and goals and abilities and keeping everybody happy and all working together to do something that is extraordinarily difficult in the game. It is not a like I was joking. I said you could put it on a resume, and people, if they knew what they were talking about, would be like, oh wow, this is, you have a lot of experience here working with a large group of people and managing people, right? And I think when you have that common goal, you're all on the same page, you're all aligned on some level for what the relationship is about and what you're working towards, and then the fun little interpersonal stuff is a bonus on top of it. Why do you think that's so hard for a lot of people to create in real life?
Well, I guess in terms of World of Warcraft, it's easy in a sense. It's hard work, but ultimately it's easy. You're at your computer, and anybody can set up a guild. Now, I'm not saying anybody can make a great guild, but anybody can make a guild. You just got to get a couple of people to sign a charter, and then then it's good. And I guess it's tricky. I think with World of Warcraft, there's kind of some certainties what you kind of expect. If you make a guild with your friends, you can relatively expect that you'll be raiding and you'll be enjoying the game. In real life, there's a lot of unknowns. You don't know what you're going to expect. You're kind of putting yourself out there, and you might not always get what you want. So falling back onto something like World of Warcraft, where the reward is pretty much guaranteed, even if you're like wiping on a boss for months on end, and I know I've definitely been there, you still get that sense of accomplishment. You still know that there's an ultimate goal. And if you don't meet those goals, there'll be a new patch, a new expansion, there'll be more content in the game and something new to work towards. But there'll always be something to work towards. And you don't always know that in real life, I think.
There's a lot in what you're saying that I really, really am lighting up with, because on some level you're talking about how a game like World of Warcraft or other video games create a structure, a feedback system, a clear pathway, a goal, where if you learn how to play it, you learn the rules, and you learn how to do it well, you can develop some level of mastery that is extraordinarily satisfying. I mean, I can relate to that for sure. Not a lot of people probably can, but just for the people that can't, know that it is extremely satisfying. And when you're faced with the unknowns of real life, it is infinitely more complicated. And there's something about facing that complication with building something in the real world that, I don't know, I pick up on a sense that there's like a vulnerability in that. There's something that you would have to expose or face or deal with. What comes up for you?
I think we can relate this back even to the IRL film, because that film was obviously built around the addiction to World of Warcraft. But I would say me releasing it into the world, I remember when I first showed my film course, I was the only film, my film course was about 130 people. which for somebody who's got social anxiety, to stand up in front of everyone and show off my film was really quite daunting. But my film got a standing ovation.
Wow.
It was the only film to get a standing ovation for my entire course. I was, at this point in my film course, it was my final year, but I kind of floated in the background. For the first year, I kind of wasn't there because I was playing autograph. The second year, I was kind of just finding my feet. But it wasn't really until my third year where I kind of was like, hey guys, this is me. I'm a film director, and this is what I've made. And then people responded to that. They loved it. And people would come up to me in university after that. I felt like the big man on campus after that, because people would come up to me to say, "Oh, I saw your film, it was amazing," And then I released online, and different websites took notice of it. All the gaming websites looked at it and wrote articles about it. I'd even have people at university come up to me who saw my film on a gaming website and then realized that we were at the same university. They're like, "Oh." And so they seeked me out to find it.
Wow.
So, all of that was quite, so getting back to the point, all of that was amazing. I had all of this amazing feedback in real life from a film that I'd made, that I put out. I was getting all that positive reinforcement about my skills. I felt validated in how, because for a long time I kind of felt like I was just invisible,
Right.
So it's kind of getting that feedback loop where it was like positive reinforcement, and the film went viral.
Right.
It got over 1 million views, and I was invited to different Comic Cons and film festivals. It won a few little awards. I was on TV in Australia. Just talking about.
What I'm reacting to on some level is, it's kind of like there's something that people are reacting to in this film, and I don't really think it's just as simple as World of Warcraft. Oh, I relate. I play as much as you do. There's something way more human in it, and I'll just tell you my reaction. When I watched that video, it was an extraordinarily hopeful video. It was I don't think people realize how difficult it is to have the level of self-awareness that you did, where you can look at yourself and say, this is great, and I've done a lot of amazing things, but it's not everything, and it's not all of who I am. And you going out and showing more of who you really are as a director, as somebody, as a creator, as a person who's struggled and will be willing to share that struggle, I think that really just hits a chord with people. It did with me. I was like, wow, like this is a guy who has achieved something. And again, we're all a work in progress, right? I'm not saying, you've done it, go ahead and retire, you're good. But it's like, it's a sign for a lot of people that may not want to take that leap and say, I want to show the world other sides of myself. Why is that so difficult? Why as hard as it was, you think?
Just need a minute's thing. Why was it difficult to show? I suppose when IRL came out, I was at university still. So I hadn't really experienced the world at large in a sense. I hadn't been able to really, in a way, I was working towards my career. I hadn't started my career. But the years after IRL, which I've never really spoken about because, I made like an IRL 2 film to kind of talk about the immediate aftermath of IRL, but also I kind of used it as an opportunity to remake the first film because I felt I could make it better. And that film did have some success, but it didn't live up to the same sort of raw feeling of the first film. And I guess because I had such a huge reaction to my first IRL film, I kind of felt like the world was my oyster. I could do anything, People would be lining up to give me some kind of film work, That's kind of what I was almost expecting. But then reality kind of hit, and that didn't really happen. There was like a 15 minutes of fame, you could say, after the release of the first film, where it was blowing up, and I was getting all these kind of interview offers and all that. And I thought, great, I can go on to something new. And then I chased that feeling again with the IRL2 film. But then after that, things kind of quietened down. It didn't really go anywhere. And I kind of spent like a long time mentally wrangling myself about what to do with my career. I was out of university. I had this great film that got viral. I was applying to lots of jobs in film work, production companies and just nobody was taking the bait. But on the side, World of Warcraft was always there. It was always giving me that positive, that reliable sense of accomplishment was always there on the side. And I think the years after the IRL film kind of came out, I started resenting the real world a bit because I felt like I wasn't really getting what I wanted out of anything. And I kind of just sort of went into like a long depressive period. And I did a few little bits of work, mainly for like local schools. But my dreams as a kid was always to be like a feature film director. That's what I always wanted to do. I remember watching E.T. as a kid, and that's kind of sparked my imagination. It sparked my desire to work in films, work on big budget films.
Right.
And I was nowhere close to doing that. And, so I kind of just kept going back to World of Warcraft. That was my reliable, safe haven where I could keep achieving stuff, keep having these social connections. But the real life, again, kind of declined to the point where I felt alone. I felt like my life wasn't going anywhere, not the way I'd hoped. So,
I'm just having such a big reaction to you sharing this. And first of all, thank you for sharing this, because this is the stuff I'm talking about that is the most relatable to people. I relate to it. I exactly relate to it. This idea that you kind of make a shift in your life, like a big deal shift, and it nets you something extremely positive. And you're like, wow, I should have done this a long time ago. Here we go. Now it's all starting. And then it starts to fade away. It starts to peter off. And one of the hardest things for anybody to do is to sustain that kind of work, to continue doing it and reinvent. And I'm going to be very blunt with you. There's something you said when you said you were feeling alone that I've been picking up this whole time you've been talking, that a lot of everything you did it alone. Like, not that you made the documentary alone. I know you had other collaborators that helped you with it, but this idea of like, did anybody know that you were trying to make this shift? Did anybody know you were really working towards sustaining and building a film career that was impactful and could get to the upper echelons of a blockbuster film?
That's a good question. I would definitely say that my best work that I've ever done has always been by myself. I remember even in high school, I studied media. I did media studies, and there was like a group project. And I suppose this was kind of the first time it went viral in a sense. I made a short music video. It was like a mashup between Green Day and Oasis. And nice. It was just for like a music video A-level media studies project. And I did that alone, and it went viral online. Other schools started sharing it as like examples of great work. And, again, I had that big man on campus feeling at high school at the very tailor end of it. But did people know what I was trying to do? I had some friends on my university course who would know that I was aspiring in that way. My friends at World of Warcraft, some of them, that I was close with, would have known. But maybe not to the extent that, people would know it was actually a driving force for me. But then that's the other side of it. It's like, I didn't always push it as hard as I did other aspects. And I guess it's kind of back to the main question: like, why haven't I pushed the thing I wanted to do the most?
Yeah, exactly. You're. Oh my God, I'm just. I'm very impressed with you, and I don't know how you take that, but I really am. And so, and what I'm reacting to in your story about going through, my best work I do alone, and I've created amazing things, and then through that work, I've created the kind of connection and accolades that I've been looking for, which is, yeah, that's excellent. And then I look at the disconnect between that never happened in World of Warcraft for even a second. I mean, in World of Warcraft, it is everybody to get. Now, there's a hierarchy of who's doing what, but on some level, it's kind of like there was your prototype for creating something really huge and big, and it was a massive challenge, and there was so many other people with you and aligned with you. But you've always wanted more for yourself, or in addition to. It's not like you got to lose that or say it wasn't worth it, because it was. And this is where I think the crux of the trouble is for a lot of brilliant people. Because let's go back to how it felt for you to be in school, which is a very relatable experience. When you are a gifted or talented person, there is a little bit of a sense that you're an alien. You don't really see the world the same way that other people do. You don't really process things the other way. The way everybody kind of globs onto the popular things, it just kind of strikes you as like, I don't get it. And so there's always this kind of value system that if I'm going to do anything, it's going to be different than everybody else. And they're not going to be on board in the same way I are. Or if I do allow them to come on board with me in my creation process, they're going to kind of muck it up. Right. And the challenge becomes, how do I do exactly what you did? Be vulnerable with what I'm trying to create. Say, I'm wanting to build something even bigger. And here's what I've done all by myself. And now how do I get other people on board that I'm trying to take it to another level? That to me is the hardest part. Doing this podcast, I had rigid ideas of what I wanted it to look like. And luckily I'm working with the producer, Jamie, who is amazing. And she's like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. And I'm like, you just don't get it. You don't understand what I'm trying to do. And then I did it my way, and it was like, oh, this is terrible. Because it's hard for us to say we have a vision and then to convey that vision and to convey those wants and then to feel like I don't know how to get there. But if I do it alone, I have more control. I have more ability. That's where I'm like really picking up this relatable experience of you're giving people a message that the more you open up about who you are and what you really want, there are people there that are going to be like, oh my God, thank you. That really speaks to me. That motivates me. That inspires me. That has me change. It's like, and then sustaining that and keeping it going is just incredibly difficult. And so I guess that leads me to my next question. When's IRL 3 coming out? No, I'm sorry. Go give me a reaction to what I'm saying. What do we pick?
Well, I mean, funny you should say about IRL3, because I guess that's kind of where my thoughts were. Because after that, I made the IRL1 and the IRL2 films. And again, I was still in this kind of 15 minutes of fame, like honeymoon period of my films. I wanted to keep chasing that feeling. And I brainstormed for a long time about other films. What would I make next? And it wasn't necessarily IRL3, but other films related to gaming, other documentaries. Because even though I felt like my minutes of fame were ticking out or clocking out, I still felt like I had a following. I kind of built a reputation at this point, and maybe that's what I should latch onto. But I've always kind of been quite. I wanted to make a documentary, but I wanted to make it different. I wanted to try and do it differently to what other people have done, in my own way. Something, that's not really just something different. And that kind of perfectionism, trying to do something different, meant that I ended up doing nothing at all because I spent so much time brainstorming and doing nothing. that I just, in the end, just nothing happened. Which kind of led me back to then IRL3, because IRL3 felt like the easy option in terms of what I could do next, because I've done IRL1, I did IRL2, which I guess it's more like an IRL 1.5 when I look back at it. But it was like IRL3, what would I do? Because those years after the films came out, where I was struggling to kind of find myself, and I was still playing World of Warcraft, and you could argue that I got more addicted in this period afterwards than I did before, because I was an adult at this point, and I had responsibilities which were definitely being neglected, but I wasn't really pushing any opportunities. And I was working harder to keep the guilds. I'd been through different guilds, so this was a whole different guild at this point, to keep things going. And that lasted longer than the period from the IRL 1 film. So with IRL 3, I kind of tried to come up with an idea, but there was never really a satisfying ending. I could never find what the ending would be, because the ending hadn't been written. So I kind of, again, that was something that kind of put on the back burner. So I'm just trying to think if, yeah.
How do you, this is what I want to, again, you're doing this amazing thing where it's kind of like you're sharing a story about what it's really like. And you're right, the ending hasn't been written. But I can just tell you that those people that were into your first 2 videos, if they were to hear you say what you just said, and I hope they do, how do you think they would react?
I think probably surprised in a sense. Like, I think the feeling after the first film, again, was like, okay, this guy's overcome gaming addiction. Now the world's his oyster. He's going to go on to do great things. And it was almost an expectation that I'd start, making my way. And, also this came out at a time when, like, streaming on Twitch wasn't really as, like, common as it is now. And I was not really fully equipped to kind of, like, understand how to utilize what I'd done to its fullest extent. So the people seeing the first film, I think they'd mainly be surprised. Probably surprised that I was still playing, or even though I said in the second film that I was still playing. But probably surprised that I haven't really done anything since. I have done stuff, but
I've seen your Instagram. You've done stuff. I mean, you've created. Yeah. I know that for sure. But they might be surprised. But I get this sense, because I'm only going off my own reaction. There's a validation in what you're saying, Anthony, because it is this hard. It is not. You have this one crowning achievement and then everything's. It is a constant growth and constant process of who am I? I am not one thing. I am multiple things. And how do I pursue that? And what do I really want? And how do I prioritize? I mean, that is the most real thing on the planet. Every person listening, if they say they don't relate to it, are lying. Because that is what I want. I don't like these success stories where it's like, hey, I did this and it was no problem. And all you got to do is X, Y, and Z and you're free. And it's like,
yeah.
There's no way.
No.
So the story, again, is yet to be unwritten. And that is really what it's about. It's kind of like, you're not dead yet. You've got a lot more to give. And it's not that should be an expectation on you. It's like, oh, you're so talented. And so therefore you should do something with it. No, it's just this. Yeah, you could, but it comes down to having these moments of, like that teacher saying, hey, I'm going to make it very black and white. You got this or you got this. What do you want?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, this kind of, playing something like World of Warcraft was so meaningful, because you'd have these clear objectives set out for you, which you don't really have in real life, especially once you leave school and university. You're a bit directionless, unless you've got very clear ideas of what you want to do. Or how to get there. The quote unquote achievements don't really exist. well, the objectives don't really quest. You kind of almost have to create up your own quests and figure that out for yourself. Which for me has been quite a challenge, I guess. I haven't really been able to identify it. I've always had like the end goal, but I've never had or never really figured out the steps to get there. Because there's multiple paths to these goals, right? And I think that's kind of where real life and virtual life and games, specifically, are kind of very different. You're kind of in the real world, you're there. Mm-hmm. Anything is possible, but you have to make it happen. And again, with like the content creation, it's a long grind. You can't expect things to happen. You have to constantly keep showing up online. You'll hear other content creators burning out because they're constantly putting out content online. Because they feel like they have to constantly be there. Otherwise, they will fade back into, nothing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that is it. Because you're that, oh boy, we're opening up a can of worms here, but this is what I think, in my head, give me a second. As I'm listening to you talk, I'm really thinking of the parents and the kids and the other adults listening to this podcast and feeling like I relate. So what do I do? And what I want to point out is what Anthony is doing right now with me, if I can use you as an example, is exactly what you do. You talk about it. You share the story. You own the vulnerability. You don't look at it as, oh, I failed or I succeeded. It comes back to a very, difficult to answer yet simple to ask question of, what do I really want here? What am I working towards? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to involve? How do I, and yeah, it's a little bit of, I got to get back on the horse of whatever it is I'm doing, And there's going to come a point in this podcast for myself where I'm probably going to get bored, frustrated, annoyed, whatever, where I'm like, oh, I got to make another episode, blah. And it's at that point that I either have to decide, well, I'll just keep doing it and hope I feel better, or I have to be like, what is that thing that's missing? And who should I talk to? And who do I have with me that can kind of help me sort that out? Because the main thing I want people to walk away with, it is way more complicated than people realize to achieve what you're trying to achieve, what we're all trying to achieve, and it's asking very tough questions and being as vulnerable as you are. I think you're an absolute testament to showing exactly what it takes. If you really break down your story, you honestly have a framework and an outline for what most people should do if they're really feeling the same issue, of how to break free, of what they really need, how they have to force certain things and face certain things and get honest with themselves. It's all there, right? And then you're also showing like, I ain't done yet. There's more, and I'm not sure what it is, and that part sucks. But you're moving forward, and so no matter. The key thing that I like to teach people in our work here and what we do at the center is we try to teach people that you are not your identity, meaning you are not one thing, and you realize that for yourself. I'm not just a Warcraft player. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a very, relationship forward person. I'm a very all encompassing human being. And if I kind of know that about myself, how do I start to break that down into how do I start to create some more and be okay with the fact that there aren't these clear objectives and, achievements that have very clear criteria? Any thoughts?
I guess like people would ask me from the IRL films, that they'd share their stories with me and their struggles and what to do, if they're feeling in the same sort of situation as I did. And it's always kind of came back to figuring out what those goals are you have in life, what are you striving towards, what you want to do. But even in that, it's kind of an open-ended question because it's not always an easy answer, Even now, in my current life, I'm kind of find myself a bit directionless at times. I'm not always, getting the kind of work I want to be doing. And it's kind of like trying to, you almost have to reset, I think, and sort of pull yourself out of your body and sort of like observe yourself from like a third person and just sort of figure out, okay, this is what I want, but how do you get there? And it's even, but I think the problem and the kind of the issue that I've always struggled with is, okay, I know I know the steps in theory, what to do to get there, but the result isn't guaranteed. You could do so much hard work, you could put everything into it, and it might go nowhere, which is often the case, especially in the creative industry. There's lots of creatives out there who will put everything into their art, and maybe only a handful of people see it. I used to, on Instagram and other places, like I used to share my photos and it would just be met with a couple of bots or like a few views and stuff. And you start to wonder, what's the point? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because nobody cares. Nobody's seeing it. I'm invisible, And I'd say on Instagram and also with Threads and Bluesky recently, I have kind of turned things around where people have noticed my work and I'm getting that recognition from my creative side that I kind of been lacking for, I guess, the last decade almost. It's only been the last year that I've kind of got a following of people who are interested in my photography and stuff. But then even then, I'm not a professional photographer. Photography is kind of my side thing. It's my it's my side. It's not even a hustle. It's just like something I do. Your videography is the main thing that I do professionally. So even then, whilst trying to, I get recognition for one thing about my life that is not even really a priority, if that makes sense. So,
absolutely. Are you kidding me? You're making more sense than anybody. I mean, that's, again, you got to realize you are hitting some real dilemmas. That is what it means to be, especially a creative person, a talented creative person, because you're, oh God, it's hard. It's hard. And what I like about what you're doing is that even though on some level you're saying, I'm not where I want to be, which is a vulnerable place to own, right? I don't have what I want yet. I also probably, if I challenge you to say, do you really feel like all the work that you put out there had no point, wasn't part of your process, wasn't, something for you as you continue to develop? And, I would imagine the answer would be, I don't really think that.
Yeah.
But I'm still working for more and to be seen and to be by other people. And so, and again, I think you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. And I hope people find you through this format because I want it to be an example for what other people's, this is not easy to come on a podcast with, a stranger and really talk about your life. That's not easy. That's not a simple thing. Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of almost the easiest thing to do because we've kind of just met really. So, so it's to tell somebody that you've just met all these things about yourself and just be vulnerable. It's almost easier than to do with people that you know. Like, I wouldn't be able to, I don't think I'd be able to have this chat with my parents. I mean, they might listen to this, but I wouldn't be able to, talk to them about it really. That's kind of a lie because I have spoken to my parents about stuff. But I mean, thinking back to when I was younger, when I was playing, really playing World of Warcraft a lot, I probably wouldn't have had this chat. And, so, because the trick is kind of like how would you advise parents to sort of tackle what I'm explaining? And it's not an easy answer. It really isn't. Because, I think just being heard and knowing that you got the support and just mistakes will happen. Nothing is guaranteed, it's some things, because you mentioned about how I feel about previous work I've done. And maybe, I feel like as a creative, I'm almost obliged to be dismissive of past work.
I get that.
But I do appreciate kind of where my work has gone and where how people have responded to it. And, some people have made better changes because of it. And even my photography, people respond to it, and I post photos usually every day. And people say, like, it's just the best part of their morning, just seeing my photos, just giving them. I try to keep away from any like heavy topics and stuff. I just try to keep it just, nice photos. And it's just those little things in life that kind of where you can have an impact, even in a small way.
Absolutely.
Makes a big difference to people. And I guess that's kind of the main drive with like film and photography, and it's about telling stories and connecting with people and just trying to have an impact. Yeah.
That is such a perfect way to start to wrap this up, because I think I want to add on one last thing to what you said about the parents. I think what parents need to hear is how deep this stuff goes. It's not just video games. It's not just a form of entertainment. It's life, it's development, it's creation, it's, all of it. And I love what you said, that parents just need to hear that, because parents tend to get into this bit where they try to fix it. They see that you're struggling. Guess what? You're allowed your struggle. And that is, as an artist, our job is to create that struggle and make some level of meaning out of it, because it's going to be there regardless. And can we be clear about what we're trying to do and have people be alongside us and hold us accountable, rather than, well, do this and that'll fix it. That's not helpful. And I think if parents can hear that, that would be a very concrete thing to walk away with whenever you're engaging, however old your child is, with gaming. It's like, it has a purpose for you. There's a meaning in it, but I know that there's more to you. And so the job is, how do we help express that and help you express that right to the kid? So, Anthony, I want to just extend my eternal gratitude for you being here today. This was really a moving experience for me, and hopefully for our listeners as well. And, if you're interested in following Anthony, we'll have his handles and social media links attached to the show descriptions. I really encourage you to do so. And Anthony, I hope we can stay in touch, but thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.